All right, what's up, everyone? I'm Mash the Stampede from Two Stupid Gamers, and we wanted to do a quick video here, a tutorial on how to set up custom paint jobs in iRacing. Now, trust me, I know people hate tutorials that start off with way too much explanation, so we're going to get right into it. I'm just going to take a quick second to remind everyone, if you like what you see, make sure to hit that subscribe button. The first thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and open up iRacing, of course. You make the paints within iRacing. There's a whole system that you have to access the template files. Then you'll go ahead and you will need either Photoshop or a free editor that allows you to stack layers in the shop. GIMP is another great example, but for the purposes of our tutorial, I'm just going to say right now we'll be using Photoshop. So all the way here on the left-hand side, you're just going to pick the paint option, and that's going to show you where we have a bunch of different paint schemes already set up. As you can see, we have our Two Stupid Gamers paint. I like the ability to be able to freely rotate the car in like a 3D preview. I almost wish we could do more with this, but I'm sure that they don't want to do that. So we do actually get to preview every angle of it. It's nice when you come back here and you get to make sure that everything looks the way that you want it to. For this tutorial, I'll just show off 3 real quick paint schemes as fast as I can go. Okay, so the first car that we're going to start with is the street stock Panner C1 body. I don't know what it was about this car, but there's a specific paint scheme that I had in mind for this for a while. But up to this point, I believe I've only been using the default, so this will become my regular paint scheme. Anyway, what we have to do first is we have to go to download template. Once you download the template, I'm going to show you guys where you go inside your folders so that you can access these files and where you need to place them. After you've downloaded the template to your desired downloads folder, and you go ahead and open it, just so you know for your future reference, when you come to the custom painting FAQ on iRacing support site, it actually explains where to put it. So there's a specific folder that you're looking for on your computer within the iRacing documents, and that's generally going to be right here. That's going to be documents/iRacing/paint/stock cars and then Chevys. Really, you're just looking for the specific folder. Unfortunately, and I hate this about iRacing, but unfortunately, you can't have multiple ones ready within the service. So you can only use one paint scheme at a time. It's set up to the car and it's linked with the iRacing UI software manager, which kind of sucks because then, like, if you wanted to have 6 or 7, maybe several of these paint schemes to freely choose from, you can't do that. Kind of a bummer, but still cool that they let you do this. So real quick, let's break down this template because this might not make sense to a lot of people. Essentially, they've layered the entire template for painting your car into 3 separate folders. And I don't understand all of this aspect. Like, I don't know what every single layer affects, but just so that you know, you have your top layer, custom spec Mac. I think this we could generally ignore. Then you have the second area where you have to turn this off before you export. And of course, then there is the actual paintable area. But as you see, if you turn off the middle folder, the red folder, when you're trying to access your painting area folder, you can't actually see anything. So that's really going to be there as more of a reference. So you have your paintable area, your main car body. So there's only blue right now. If you had more stuff on it, you would just paint it. And again, I'm gonna time lapse through this so we don't have to kind of sit there while I paint it. I'm just gonna show you guys real quick the car that I was talking about. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Grand Theft Auto 3, but this is the Diablo Stallion. And for some reason, when I first saw the street stock, this came into my mind. Like, we had to put this type of paint scheme onto the street stock. I'm gonna go ahead and try my best to paint the Stallion version of the street stock, and again, we're gonna time lapse it. I am gonna explain a couple of things very basically, but we're just gonna run through this real quick. So the car is broken up into every side. You have your top, left side, right side, front and back, and this is gonna be important because this lets you know where on the 3D model all of this is gonna go. So for instance, if I go ahead and I change everything to red, if I change the main car body layer to red, the whole car is now red. If I wanted to undo that and change it back to blue, blue is right there. So for the purposes of what we're doing, we're going to start off with a nice black base, And all we really have to do is run a flame on the very bottom. Now, I'm not the best at doing this sort of thing, so I'm going to kind of try my best. And I will constantly reference back to the original Stallion. So as you see on the Stallion, the red flame goes from the front bumper all on the lower end to the to just above the trunk area, which the trunk area would be over here. So all I really have to do is run it across this way and then back to the other side, just a quick flame. You can start by opening up another layer, and as you can see, any kind of edits that you make will stay fixed to the template of the car. So even though you end up painting in some parts that aren't on this cutout template of the car, when I turn off the red folder, you could see that there's parts there that were hidden before. The folder isn't going to pick any of that up. It's only going to pick the parts that's applicable to the template once you put it back into your iRacing folder. You want to make a very specific edit, let's say. Well, it needs to be within a selectable area. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select the entire bottom. So anything that I brush will not touch the top part. So yeah, we're going to kind of go ahead here. I'm trying my best here, so, you know, don't go easy on me in the comments with this one. This is a tutorial. We're just doing this on the fly. I got other stuff I want to do too, but yeah, a little bit of red. We're gonna get a tiny bit of orange as well. I'm gonna change the opacity down just for myself. I'm no Bob Ross over here. I'm just we're just goofing around. All right, well, it does take a little bit of talent, and if you don't have talent, you don't get a lot of really good results. But just to make sure that everyone knows that this paint scheme is a reference to the Grand Theft Auto car, because I'm not going to bother to go ahead and make the flames. I'll try to fix that in post at some point. This is really more for the tutorial. We're not really going to be able to have the block in there because there isn't an actual block, so I think it would be kind of dumb to have it. So instead, what I'll do is I'll probably just put a logo on the hood. But it has to be said, what's really cool about iRacing is that people get very creative with their paint schemes, and they put a lot of different stuff into it. So I don't know how they're kind of like okay with getting away with people putting in like copyrighted logos. But for the time being, you could put logos onto your car. You could make like a cool reference to some video game or some movie or something, just like we're doing right here. Yeah, with that in mind, we're just going to finish this off. Actually, first I'm going to finish this off with the front bumper. I noticed that we're going to need that front bumper. On the actual car itself, there's like a physical bumper, so I'm just going to put gray here just to kind of specify it. You're going to need to get a little bit of trial and error with figuring out which part is which. But eventually you will manage it. It's just a little bit odd at first. Unlike with the brush, which gives us mixed results, I'm actually just going to go ahead and use the select tool, and we're going to change that to gray, maybe a little lighter gray. We'll take a little bit of trial and error because technically speaking, well, how do I know that this is the hood, the front of the car? It doesn't say it is. It might be the back of the car. Maybe this is the front of the car. But again, once you mess around with it, you'll figure out which part is which on your car. And yeah, like I said, I'm just going to throw in the logo here real quick. I just pulled this off of the Wikia for Grand Theft Auto. Again, just like figuring out which part is which, it's going to take a little bit of trial and error for you to figure out where specifically you want to put these. You'll get back into the 3D model and you see that's a little bit off. So keep your Photoshop or GIMP file open so that you can easily reference it. Definitely don't just make this and delete it. I keep backups of all of these paints, so it's definitely a good idea to have one on hand. Because when you put it into the 3D model, it might not look exactly like how you want it. You might just want to tweak a couple of things. So with this being done, let's go ahead and take a look how this looks in iRacing. Okay, so right here is what I was talking about. You want to make sure to save this as a target file. So when you go in to save it, you have to select TGA VDA ICB/VST. It's called a target file. This is the type of file that iRacing uses for these paint schemes. If you save it as a regular Photoshop file or a GIMP file, it's not going to work. So you have to save it as a Targa file. And another thing is it's going to ask you to compress RLE. You want to click that as well. And now that we have my documents folder open, we're going to go into paint and we're going to scroll all the way down till we find stock cars, street stock. And once I find the street stock folder, I'm going to basically just paste the Photoshop file in here. Now I bet you're wondering, oh, hey, I have it in this folder. All I have to do is I have to drag it in. You actually have to rename it to something specific, which gets kind of annoying, but you'll figure it out. Yeah, according to the tutorial, as you guys could see right here, you need to name the TGA file in the following format. Paint type, then underscore customer ID.tga. That's how you're going to get this to actually work. Because otherwise, iRacing still will not be able to recognize this as a paint scheme that it can use in the game. You can find the customer ID by clicking on the helmet in the top right corner of the iRacing UI, and then you select profile. The customer ID will be shown in the top of the window, and then you put that into your customer ID part, into the customer ID brackets right here. I'm going to be honest, it's a little bit confusing, but just read this tutorial back a couple of times and you should be able to get it. And now with all of that out of the way, you went ahead and you downloaded the template file, you painted the car exactly the way that you wanted, and then after that you located the specific folder, which admittedly can be kind of annoying, in your iRacing directory folder, so that you can then get the paint scheme into the sim. So let's take a look at how this came out. Again, you're gonna want to look at this and double check to see if there's anything that stands out to you. Maybe some of the logos you put in could be made a little bit bigger. Maybe they're a little bit too small. They're off center, anything like that. For the purposes of this tutorial, there's definitely more stuff I would want to do with this. I will come back and make a much cooler version of this, but this is just an example that we wanted to show. I'm also going to do 2 more examples real quick just to kind of show it off with a couple of other cars. So back to iRacing, I actually got the Ferrari 296 GT3. This is a car that's used in a lot of the different series where they mix like Porsches, BMWs, Mercedes, and Aston Martins. So this is a very commonly used car right now. So I decided to get it just so that I can play some of the cool races with like Nürburgring. And since then, I've only been using the regular paint scheme, which is fine on its own. But obviously, now that you guys know how to do this, we want to paint it. So I'm just going to do a really quick, very basic, very simple paint scheme on this car. So we're going to go ahead and download that template. And as you can see, this is way more complicated than the street stock car. But thankfully, like I said, I'm not really going to go for anything too crazy. I just want to make a very simple edit. This is just going to be a reference to one of my beloved favorite series of all time. That's going to be the Sega series. How can I make a Ferrari and not give us a Outrun themed car? Now, we're going to have to just paint the whole thing red. I'm going to be guessing here a couple of times, so we'll see how this goes. But all I really want to do is I just want to slap an Outrun logo on the side and put a little bit of a license plate. These cars don't actually have license plates since they're race cars, but I've seen people do this online. You can put a license plate on the back of the car to make it look like that. So again, the beautiful part about this is that you can get as creative as you want. Now, as a bonus tip, what you can also do real quick is you can put back. I'm gonna put in the word back, and I'm just going to save this. Now, obviously, this isn't finished, but putting this into iRacing will show me where the piece that I want is. I may also want to do that with like the front as well. Okay, so unfortunately, it got a little bit crushed, but you can kind of see how the words will end up translating into this. So I don't know how I can get rid of this pro. I'm going to go back and take a look at the Photoshop file to see if there's something in the Photoshop file that can be messed with. But as you can see, this is, in fact, the back. B-A-C-K. You can barely see it, but it's there. So if I would put the Outrun style license plate just like the way it is on the car, I would put it here. That might take a little bit more work, so I think I'm going to make this a much more basic layout. This car also has a bunch of stickers on it, So I'm not sure if you can take some of these stickers off in any way, but we'll take a closer look at the Photoshop and I'll bring that up later. And as you can see, the hood is here as well. There is a vent on the car, so the text got cut off. So you definitely don't want to put it straight in the middle, maybe somewhere like lower. And the trunk, you could just barely see it because this car has a giant wing. So the trunk is there. That's if you wanted to paint the trunk in any way. I'm also kind of wondering if the trunk and the back part kind of connect in the Photoshop file, but we'll take a closer look at that again. So yeah, no, they don't. Hood. Okay, so there are a couple of stickers, and there is the Pro Plate. So let me get rid of all of this stuff. We don't need that anymore. Board, car pattern, non-metallic. Okay, so you can also take off all of the car pattern, the carbon fiber. I mean, that's something that I want to do for the purposes because, like, I'm pretty sure the Outrun car doesn't have any of that on it. And as you can see here, we could basically very cleanly take all of the decals off. Yeah, so we can make this as very basic as much as, which is what I want to do for the purposes of my car. In fact, let's say I wanted to keep the Ferrari logo. I didn't want to take that off. All I have to do is just come here, and with the eraser tool, I can just go ahead and take out the stuff that I don't want. We're gonna increase the size there because we definitely need increase on that. But yeah, I want to keep the Ferrari logos, but all of this stuff I just don't really care about. I'm fine with the Ferrari on the front, the little Ferrari emblems with the horse on the side. That's fine by me. But the rest of it, you know, I want it to be as clean, as normal as it is. Real quick, just to do a tangent, there are going to be some parts in this collage blow up it references in game to other stuff. So you do have like your pitbox. If you go all the way down, your pitboard is also selectable here. And well, I mean, I want it to match the rest of the color, so of course I'm just going to make that red as well. Your pitbox colors as well over here, I want that to be red as well, so we'll make that once again red. Definitely take your time and look through all of this stuff to make sure that you can see, hey, this affects this affects that. Just be very thorough in how you're taking a look at this. And for a second I missed a part. This will happen when you put your paint scheme into iRacing sometimes, is that you'll miss something, and when you pull into your pits you'll realize, oh, the pit box doesn't match at all. And all it takes is just going back to the Photoshop file, just making sure to find the specific thing that you have to change, because again, colors that are related to the pit are actually in this file as well. Find it, you know, change the color, get creative if you like. You know, people have put lots of different images to more creative, more involved patterns, whatever it is that you want. You know, figure it out, but make sure to find the part that's missing from your paint job and update it when you put it into iRacing, so you'll have a fully customized vehicle, you have fully customized pits, you'll have fully customized everything. So I realized during this part of the tutorial I may have neglected to mention which Outrun car I'm talking about. So right here we have the Outrun car from the artwork in the original display. Now obviously they're not using a Ferrari because they wouldn't be able to, but this is Ferrari Testarossa, I believe, the specific version of it. So what I want to do is I want to recreate this license plate, and I also want to put the Sega logo, and just to kind of make this a little bit more involved, I'll just put the actual Outrun logo on both sides of the car. When you're going back and flipping something to the other side, obviously you want to follow along your lines in Photoshop to make sure that it's symmetrical. But even besides that, you have to be aware that anything you put on one side of the car will have to be flipped on the other side of the car. So we can imagine that this is the back wheel over here, so the text will be in the correct orientation. But when I put it to the other side of the car, I'm going to have to flip that. So real quick, we're going to take that, and now the Outrun logo should be visible as well. Again, you'll play around with it. You'll figure out the way that works for you. You also want to leave a little bit of room between the sides. I've kind of noticed that if you put something too close to the edge, it might end up being cut off in the 3D model. All right, well, obviously, it doesn't look exactly like it does in the artwork, but we put it in as a reference to the original thing. I'm going to go ahead and finish this one out, and we'll throw it over to iRacing. So, unfortunately, some things didn't work out perfect with this, but again, because this is such a simple car, it doesn't really end up mattering. So, on the very back, we can see that the license plate is cut out, but if I make it any smaller, the outrun letters aren't going to look as big and pronounced, and technically that California, the little California text is up there. For all intents and purposes, I'm really happy with how that looks. It also took a lot of finagling to get the Sega logo exactly where I wanted to. One of the unfortunate parts of doing this is there's no way to adjust the car in real time. Like, imagine if we had the 3D model and you could just adjust everything the way that you wanted it. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. You have to make micro adjustments step at a time in Photoshop, save the layer, and then reference back to iRacing. Thankfully, it does update immediately as soon as you save the file, so you don't have to worry about closing out of iRacing or anything like that. But this still ends up taking a lot longer. Like, for instance, just setting up the Sega logo was kind of a hassle, and it took a little bit of time. I'm really glad that there wasn't a lot of other stuff that I was doing with this car, because it would have been even longer. Just given how complicated the layout is for this car. Also, another thing is that while the Outrun logo looks pretty good on the one side of the car, you can see there's a little triangle here that cuts into it. Unfortunately, it didn't look good on the other side. As you can see here, I chose to get rid of it. Maybe I'll put something else there, but for now, this is my Outrun car. And I'm just glad that I use this car a lot. So all this whole painstaking process of setting up this paint scheme is actually worth it. Because in the long run, I'm going to have a really cool car to drive around in. Now, for the last one, I'm just going to time-lapse through the whole thing because it's going to be a bit more work. I'm also probably not going to have the final version of it yet. I'll want to come back to it. Again, that's why it's so important to save these Photoshop files. Or if you're using GIMP, save the GIMP project file as a backup. So that way you can always come back to it if you end up seeing something that could be done a little bit better. So save those files, and yeah, we'll run through this real quick. I'll do a time lapse of setting up for the NASCAR Legend cars that I always love to run in the NASCAR Legends series. I'm gonna set up a Daytona USA paint scheme running with the Sega theme. now. There's still a lot of parts that aren't finished. I want to specifically draw attention to the way that they clustered in this template for this car, some of these pieces. When I went into actually paint over, I painted the part that I wanted in addition to some other stuff. Yeah, and then again, outside of that, the pitbox stuff I didn't bother with right now, and other parts, I don't know what every specific part here corresponds to on the car. So once we put this in iRacing, it'll become painfully obvious that something else needs to be adjusted. And I could do that at a future time, but for the purposes, I did the Daytona paint scheme. Now, for a moment there, I also tried to put the number 41 on the hood, but when I reference back iRacing, they're just going to put the number in. iRacing will still put your car number on top of this. You can't change that in this part of the customization. You do get to change your font and your color and stuff through iRacing, but unfortunately, iRacing has to control that part because when you get assigned to a server, the number is going to be different, so you can't put the number in here. So any kind of car numbering, just leave that out. iRacing is going to take care of that. Anyway, let's throw it over to iRacing. Let's swap out my mesh paint scheme and let's see how this looks. Because I already have one file, like I mentioned before, you can't have multiple paint schemes. So what I'm basically going to do is I made a copy of my original. That's why that one says copy. And then I'm going to save over the actual file with my mesh paint scheme with this one, and that will automatically swap it in iRacing. Again, it's kind of annoying, but at least you can keep the original one in the folder. All right, look at that. You know, I gotta say, okay, obviously I didn't put that on the back, I put that on the front. I'm gonna have to go back and fix that. There's a couple of lines that I'm gonna have to adjust to go along with the gray at the bottom, but I gotta say, this came out a lot better looking than I thought. We can see that some of the parts I painted over that are still gray, these need to be made red. Those are some of those little inserts and stuff. But yeah, I mean, the logos look good. The number, I just got to change it. Unfortunately, I'm not always going to get the 41 that's for the car. Using what iRacing allows you, you can change the font. You can change the color of it as well. You have a couple of good options. They're not like super developed and stuff. Obviously, we would have wanted a little bit more. But it is pretty decent for what you get. Now, yeah, I mean, like I said, right here, I'm actually kind of impressed with how this looks. As I just mess around with the, yeah, there we go, to get it back like that. But I'm actually kind of impressed with how this came out. All things considered, maybe I should slap like a Sega logo on here somewhere, get a couple of those custom decals that these type of cars usually have, and I'm good to go. So that is going to do it for this tutorial. Yeah, I want to thank you guys for checking this out. I hope you found this useful. This is a great way to set up custom paint schemes for the cars that you drive in iRacing. Some of these came out okay. If I had more time dedicated to it, I could have definitely done a lot better job. But all things considered, with just 10 or 15 minutes of work, you can make a really cool paint scheme for yourself to use in iRacing all by yourself. You don't have to pay anyone for it. You could just do it by yourself. They give you the tools to do it. You just need to watch this tutorial video, figure out how to use it, and then yeah, just go wild. Just be creative. Let your Bob Ross out. Now, to just do a quick summary, once again, you download the template. When you take a look at the different layers, you will only be using the very bottommost to make your adjustments. Once you're done, you have to save it as a TGA and make sure to select the option Compress RLE. Put it into your iRacing folder. If it's not a TGA file, it's not going to work. Then it will be automatically used in iRacing as long as you use the correct code, which is car underscore, and then you're going to go ahead and put in your player profile number. Like they explained in the website, that's how the service recognizes the paint scheme, so you can have it for your races and other players can see it as well. And then you're good to go. The only thing I will say is that, again, since you're not like live adjusting it on the 3D model, it can be confusing. You're probably going to have to go back a whole bunch to adjust some things, like we saw here most recently with the Daytona car. But all in all, if you have the time, the skill, and a cool idea, you can really make a fantastic paint scheme. That's going to do it for this tutorial video. Again, I hope that this didn't run too long. Thank you guys so much for checking us out. And hey, if you want to see more iRacing content, if you want to see more racing sim content, let us know in the comments below. We try to put out more of it. If you enjoyed this, make sure to let us know in the comments. And you can also check me out on Twitch as well, and streaming on YouTube now. Mash the Stampede. I'll make sure to link those as well so you guys can check that out. I tend to do a bit of racing sims on the streams, mixed in with some other stuff as well. And as always, I am Mash the Stampede for Two Stupid Gamers. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe this video, and we'll see you next time.